Welcome to Know Your Rights, a program that explores the legal issues that are particularly important to the Black community and provides you with the information that you need to engage with the law with confidence. I'm one of your hosts, Norman Basigu, and I'm joined by co-host Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, our award-winning legal expert.
Thanks, Norman. Yes, hello, my name's Jennifer Obaseki, and I'm a solicitor with 18 years experience and the founding partner of award-winning legal practice Obaseki Solicitors.
Now, in each episode of Know Your Rights, we'll discuss a common scenario relating to an area of law, such as criminal law, housing law, or immigration law. They are the kinds of scenarios that anyone might encounter in their daily life.
The purpose of this program is to help the Black community understand how the law works. It's not offering specific legal advice. If you feel that you do require legal advice, then you should contact either your Citizens Advice Bureau or a solicitor. In this episode, we're going to be looking at criminal law.
And so, here's this episode scenario. Late one night, Jamal, a young Black man, is walking through the estate near his home. Following a recent incident, the estate has been the site of significant police activity. Now, Jamal sees two police officers nearby and hurries to leave the estate. The two officers notice this and intercept him. Now, the officers notify him that they intend to search him, but Jamal does not want to be searched. So, Jenny, let's get into it. And let's begin by looking at things from Jamal's viewpoint. He'll be wanting to know immediately, well, can he refuse to be searched in this situation?
Well, stop and search, as you know, is such an interesting topic.
Very
and
interesting.
Also, due to the number of statistics that we have to show that it is unfair, it's, again, a situation where a lot of young people feel treated wrongly, I would say. Does he have a right to refuse? Yes, he does.
Okay.
The police actually need to have reasonable grounds to suspect a crime has been committed. Just because he's in the vicinity, that is not grounds enough for somebody to be stopped. If there is what's called a Section 60 order, then what that is it's additional powers to the police where they have the right to stop and search people due to the level of crime in the area. So if that has been passed by the local borough inspector, then the police may have additional authority to stop him, even though he is not reasonably suspected of committing a crime, but because there's been prevalence of crime in that area. Unless the inspector has given the police officers that additional authority, then he might within his rights, refuse to be stopped and searched. At times, this does create a level of hostility. An officer must identify themselves, must give reasons as to why they are stopping and searching somebody. Jamal's age is not also there, and if he's a young person, he also has the right to have an appropriate adult stand by or request one. So we need to know a little bit more, but on the face of it, just him being in the area is not enough grounds for an officer to stop and search him.
Okay, so it really does depend on the situation in some instances then and how much detail there is. That's really interesting, I think very useful for viewers at home to know in terms of the situations they might find themselves in. But let's take a step back and look at this topic of stop and search more generally. Now, this procedure of stop and search has proven to be controversial for many reasons, and you alluded to this at the start of your last response, you know, it being some people finding it a bit unfair and things of that nature. And so, Jennifer, can you speak on some of the pros and cons associated with the stop and search procedure?
Now, some of the pros, it's seen as a deterrent, but the fact is it does also cause tension and friction. So if we're in an area that's suffering from high levels of crime, high levels of street robbery, or dealing of illicit drugs, or other activities that are not just criminal but also antisocial, then the stop and search activity from the police can be seen as a deterrent to those who are committing those offences or those ills, those things that are seen to disrupt public order. However, again, when we look at the statistics, it doesn't actually reduce crime. So we see that it causes friction. We see that though people want to see police to be visible and doing their job, it doesn't actually necessarily equate to the outcome of reduction of crime that we would so desire.
Yeah.
The downside, we've already relayed that. The tension, the fact that some people are disproportionately stopped in comparison to their counterparts. It seems that it might not be the best route to stopping crime, but we as a community, we have to be more invested. If we want to see crime reduced, then we have to be able to comfortably report matters to the police so that they can then use their resources to the best effect. So there is this, let me say, balance that needs to be struck. But we must say that I would say it's necessary. And when I say that, it's because of the level of crime that we see. Within East London now, we've seen that within a certain borough, between last year and this year, there's been so many stabbings. So when the inspector of that area may have to use his powers to give the police officers additional authority to carry out stops and searches more frequently, even go to the extent of carrying out curfews in order to protect the young people on the streets. Because I think in the most recent weeks, those who have been the victims of crime have been under the age of 20. And in one situation, the person that committed the offence was also under the age of 20. So you've got a perpetrator and a victim that have not even really reached their start of life, and they're already, lost to crime, if we want to put it in that way.
Now, going into that a little bit more, so, the idea of profiling, is something that is often surrounds this topic. So let's imagine Jamal in this situation. It's a Friday night, and he's been stopped and searched every single night this week, again, because his area has lots of police activity. So on this Friday night, he sees it happening again, and that's why he's darting away from the situation. Now, for someone in that situation where, in the instance, you've been stopped and searched very frequently in a short space of time, and at this point you're just fed up because you're not carrying anything, you haven't broken the law, and you've had no pre-existing issues with the law, but you feel as if at this point you're being profiled because of maybe your skin color or the clothes you're wearing or the way that you look, or maybe you're being mistaken for somebody else. What would you say to somebody in that situation where they feel that they just want to just say no and move on, but they feel they're being profiled wrongly? What would somebody in that situation do or go about navigating that situation, Jenny?
Well, you would ask again for your reasons as to why you've been stopped and why you're being searched, and why they think that there's a reasonable suspicion of you having committed a crime or an offence or being about to do so. And if you're not getting responses from the officer, them identifying themselves, them responding reasonably to your reasonable questions, then you may want to raise a complaint, especially if young Jamal has been stopped so many times. It then feels like, is he being targeted for the wrong reasons? Is it harassment? Is it police actually acting in a manner that is below the reasonable standard one would expect them to behave? If he's explained that I've been stopped 3 times this week, as an officer, what should be his individual or reasonable reaction? Especially if Jamal gives his name and address and says, I have been stopped twice already, or 3 times already, or 4 times already this week in this same vicinity. Why are you doing this? I think it's unreasonable. I would expect the actual officer to behave in a reasonable manner. If that officer does not, then it just adds to Jamal's grounds for making a complaint against the police. And making a complaint against the police is not as difficult as it used to be because of the body cameras. And that actually makes it so much easier for complaints to be dealt with faster. Back in the day, it did amount to who was around, who could be a witness, and what was said. But the beauty of the body camera is it's all there. So if Jamal can have the confidence to make a complaint, then he may actually find himself receiving justice in recompense or in apology for him being treated in such an unreasonable manner.
Right, thank you for that, Jenny. And on a closing note, are there any sorts of final views or thoughts you want to share with me and the viewers on this topic? We've discussed a lot of things in this, so are there any final words that you want to share with me and the viewers on this?
Really and truly, nobody likes to see crime. Nobody wants to live in a high crime area, and nobody wants to lose their child to crime. And that's being the victim of crime or falling into the hands of criminal activity and being sentenced as a result of crime. So we as a community need to be invested. However, we also need to be treated fairly. So you do have a right to ask to be treated fairly by police, and the police that have a job to do have an obligation to treat you reasonably and also to follow the law. And you have every reasonable ground to ask why you're being stopped, to make sure that they are stopping you in line with the authority that is laid out for them under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. If it goes beyond that, you do have a right to complain.
Cool. And with that said, Dr. Jennifer Obaseki, thank you very much for joining us here today, as always.
My pleasure.
You've been watching Know Your Rights. I'm Norman Basigu, and for myself and Jennifer, until next time, goodbye.